Well, hello there, everybody. It is Prosperity Monday. How are y'all doing? Spring has sprung, and it's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. So, thank you for dropping by, tuning in, and turning on, and being a part of this fabulous get together. There I am. The bus is ready to go, and it is just going to be a fabulous show. You see? We have we can rhyme all the time. For that's what we have is time to rhyme. So how y'all good? You had a good weekend? I did. No complaints. It's always a refreshing time just to allow the spirit to, you know, move out, move in, move up, move down. Yeah. And it was a peaceful, just very relaxing. And read a lot. We do that a lot in this house. And yeah. So I hope you had a great weekend. I know a lot of folks are into the sports thing. I'm not. Never was a real fan of basketball. Um, Football, yeah. When I was in school, I primarily track. So, but who cares? It was my life, not yours, but wherever it was. So, hello, everybody in the chat room. Let me just speak favor over us all, is open-minded said. Salutations. It is good to be with everyone, and we speak favor over us all. Nothing missing, nothing broken. That is peace. Now, if the rest of the world could just get in line with our thinking, uh, how much better would we all be? I don't know. Oh, so much going on. I'm going to do a show this week on mind control. I know it's one that is so often uh talked about, but so I was kind of just out just looking at nature, seeing the trees coming back. Hello, Nina. How are you, darling? Good to see you. And everyone else in the chat room. Gaia, how you doing? Truth Wave. I saw Gilbert. How you doing, brother? Good to see you off the hook. Grace, much love to you. Lori, hello, Lauren. Good to see you. Uh, I got an email that I need to send to you. Uh, but patience, yes. Scotty boy, what is up? So, Jackie, Jay, good to see you. And I thought I saw DC, all the rest of y'all in there. So, I'm seeing, and it's very early here where plants are getting, it's now 12 plus hours of light. And you're seeing all this. And I thought, well, is nature under some sort of mind control? Plants. Yes. No, no. We're going to talk about it. Um, but I really wanted to cover this subject. This is such an interesting topic, man. And I'm doing this primarily because my wife, we had company and this, blew them away. And when I saw that it blew them away, I thought, you know what? This is something that the tribe could really get into because the simple question is, does vampirism exist? And the simple answer is yes. Then one has to then go and say, well, if vampirism exists, then how do we define vampirism? Important, can't have any ambiguity here. And once we determine that, vampirism is like any other ism, it's a religion, it has a god, it has a structure, it has a way in which it operates, and those that operate within that structure, that belief system, that reality, no different than any of the other gods that humanity worships. Um, there are certain camps of thinking that vampires are probably actually the first true humans. Obviously, they have evolved like everything else, except for gods. You would think that the gods would evolve, but I digress on that. And that they are, in fact, the controllers. They have been here, as we discussed prior to this, for who knows how long. Thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of years. A long-lived species um, would, in its natural evolution, um, find that bridge between mortality, that which perishes, and that which is immortality and becomes immortal. I mean, you have to ask yourselves, well, how does God or gods, goddesses, etc., do they just stop evolving? I mean, do they say, oh, well, we know everything? Yeah. That's the problem with when you have someone that you say is omnipotent, omnipotent. No god, no goddess knows everything. Mm-mm. It's impossible. Again, my argument, and if you would love to come and debate that, I'd love to have the debate because if a entity, deity, if there is such a thing as consciousness that is built upon um, different levels, ascension, degrees of intelligence, right? Well, if that consciousness exists for what comes next. It's for all of us. That's what we think. What comes next? No matter what you're doing right now, it's what comes next. But if you knew everything and you knew all of the unlimited possibilities, potentiality of any given moment, what would be your purpose of existing? You'd go insane. So, getting back to that point, so it seems like there's this ever evolution. And then within nature itself, vampirism is very normal. We have plenty examples of plants. Would you like to know what type of plant that is vampiristic in its nature? Yeah, the Venus flytrap, the pitcher plant, all of them. They're vampiric in their function. They feed off directly off of the substance of those victims that fall into their traps. Nature shows us quite regularly that vampires are very real in the plant kingdom. You look in the animal kingdom, mammals, for existence. Plenty examples of mammals. Bats, number one. But think about this. Bet you may not have thought about this. So think about everything else that feeds off of blood. Flies, ticks. I happen to have been a victim of the United States government experimental biological experiments when they let loose Lyme disease up in Lyme, Connecticut, off of Plum Island. And many of you who have been bitten by ticks, you know that they directly feed off of the victim. Um, Leeches, same way, directly feed off fleas. It has a whole host on your body right now. You have, they say, hundreds, if not thousands, of different micro beings that are feeding off of you. In nature itself, there is an actual, and I want to make sure that I quote this correctly. So this is off of NBC, and the article is titled Bacterial Vampirism. And it says WSU researchers find deadly bacteria feeds on human blood. Now, unlike religion and other ideologies of politics, etc., we actually have physical proof here that within nature, and if it's within nature, then you have to extend that and say, well, it must be the way that the gods operate, this blood thing. Big, big deal. This is out of Pullman, Washington. New research suggests that deadly bacteria seeks out and feeds on human blood. A team led by researchers at Washington State University recently discovered the phenomenon known as bacterial vampirism, in which bacteria are attracted to the liquid part of blood or the serum, which contains nutrients the bacteria can use as food. Well, isn't that special? The article went on to say that when the scientists learned that some of the bacteria that most commonly cause bloodstream infections actually a sense of uh, they actually sense the chemical in the human blood and swim towards it. This professor, well, that had to be, could you imagine seeing that under the microscope? Wow. And I mean, that's reality. Imagine the reality of the bacteria. Does it have consciousness? Does it have thought? So that is pretty weird. Let me get back over here. How y'all doing? Good to see you. So now we got it on the micro scale. And come to find out, again, we humans are the main course. So if we have it in the plant kingdom, if we have vampirism in the animal kingdom, and we just subsequently happen to be animals, yeah, we all met people growing up, you know. Usually it's typically dudes that, man, so that guy's an animal. That's all I got to say. But yeah, so when we begin to look at this and take it from folklore, myth, I mean, Hollywood's done a great freaking job on this. I want to see if I had some computer issues earlier, but I wanted to see if, yeah. Um, so let me pull this up. How y'all doing out there? So good to see you. Thank you all. By the way, thank you for hitting the like button. You know, they say that the algorithm really works. I don't know. All right, so simple question, right? So for our discussion purpose, is vampirism real? And the answer is yes. But I thought it was really odd because you go back and you look at this as a species, us. Now, most would say, well, it's just human myth. Well, virtually every religion is the same way. But the interesting thing about vampirism is that, well, it seems to have a very direct connection to the theology of our species. And our ancestors, well, they had a strange belief that, you know, you can put that body in the grave, you can put dirt on top of it, but if it's infected, it ain't going to stop it. Now, reading on a number of different papers on this topic, and they are numerous. Um, we'll get to hopefully get to some of those. Um, it would seem that this is not just based on lore, but has really interesting facts behind it. The thing about the human body and when it dies and how it begins to decompose, and if it isn't properly buried or buried quickly, disease is the natural byproduct of that decomposition of that body. So you could easily see that if certain things weren't done back in the day, that how from that was a moral lesson for other societies to make sure you bury your dead. Otherwise, you're going to have woe upon you. Okay. Now, that's the physical side of it. 1,000 years ago. Each and every one of them had their own unique perspective of their lifetime and very much of their mortality. I mean, I'm sure that they wanted to live forever just as well as you and I, whatever forever entails. And so I can't help but not think that these individuals saw something else that was of another component that is only talked about typically in philosophical or theological context. And that is, well, what happens to the souls of these vampires, their spirits? It seems the spirit is converted to a nature that would be alternate from its original nature. Okay. I don't know. I would probably be more agreeable to the fact that the soul would probably be what would really need to be dealt with. Because the body has a spirit of its own, just like our souls. So, what if the body, the golem, was given the opportunity to continue to renew itself by a substance in human blood? That would be weird, wouldn't it? Coming back? I mean, our ancestors apparently took great lengths in which to deal with certain bodies, certain individuals. Now, these men, if you, as you see in this picture here, depicting a scene of where the body has already been buried, but as you can see, they have dug it up, and in the picture, you can see that there is a stake in the heart of the corpse, and subsequently the firing of a weapon, looks like maybe a shotgun of some kind of effect for some reason. Now, on one level, this is extreme desecration of a corpse. I mean, we as a species, as a society, is typically we find the dealing with departed souls and their bodies that have been left behind. There are extreme rituals in which how a body is to be prepared, even in such things as cremation. And it's interesting that when you look at the tail of vampirism, it seems cremation just eliminates that sucker right out of here. But nevertheless, it's the lore. Today, it's sexy. It's vampirism. If you look on the counterculture, has always had an active regeneration of those who drink human blood. And it's interesting because although Hollywood popularized the whole concept, um, everything has a shred of truth within it. And again, is this symbolic? Is this actual? Straight out. And that's not a negative or in any way a slight to it at all. It's based upon blood. Now, whether you're consuming it by literality, drinking of blood, or if it's used as a sacred sacrament, a proxy, or even the burning of blood, it's steeped into our very basic fundamental beliefs in God. But it's amazing how us humans are so easily mind controlled. And this is why more evidence on the actual existence of vampirism is the fact that there may very well be beings of such. Look at what's happened in history. Who was it? Was it Queen Elizabeth or Queen Mary? One of the two, the gals. Um, she believed that bathing in blood, a particular type of human blood, would give her the fountain of youth. But it's interesting when you look at royalty because royalty is all about vampirism. Royalty is all about bloodlines. Very big deal. And if we can go on a certain day of the week and go before everybody and take what is representative of blood and drink it, consume the blood as a blood offering, quote unquote, sacrifice, then this is somehow will lead us to immortality. Now, I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but that sounds awfully familiar to this whole vampire stuff. I mean, just what the hell is going on here? And folks, I participated that in decades. I actually believe that as I was drinking that substitute, that proxy, wine, grape juice, whatever it may have been, didn't matter what it was. It was what I was perceiving to be partaking of. And the drinking of blood would heal me. It would cleanse me. Again, maybe it's just me, but this stuff is weird. Now, creatures like this, we talked about Mr. Lovecraft. I love his books, by the way. This guy, I mean, this guy would have been something to sit around and smoke a joint with. I'll guarantee you he would get some shit out that would blow all of our freaking minds, But there's this other side of this control of a non Homo sapien sapien origin. Wicked. And it's odd because in the modern day genre, we have now aliens that are vampires. They feed off of humans. Now that's odd because, you know, you go all the way back to like when the story of those fallen angels, right? Well, any way that you look at how this DNA got melded together, blended together, it had to take place in blood, which would possibly point out that maybe there's different kinds of blood, not just ours, which is copper based, but maybe there are other species, other beings that they have fluid going through their bodies, much like ours. I'm not saying that it looks like ours, but it could very well have the substance of what we would say would be the same as our blood. Uh, I am a product of the early years of television. And the interesting thing about particularly the 50s, that in the 50s, which bled into the 60s, early part particularly, is that we had men primarily that when they had the opportunity to take this new medium called film that could film the soul, the body, what did they do? They went directly into, do we say, revitalizing the legend, the truth? But it's Hollywood, so you have to accentuate it. Why? Well, because if you accentuate it good enough and big enough, it really has an imprint, right? And so now they are taking what was used to be localized stories and now broadcasting it out to the freaking planet. Bela Lugosi. I mean, who cannot? And where the story comes from Eastern Europe, Vladimir, the impaler. And it is said that by the impaling of the body, that uh, the night creatures would feast. I mean, that's pretty. I mean, I don't know what persons, where their heads at. It's like, yeah, let me think about this. Sure. Yikes. And it's interesting, this depiction right here, I've seen depictions in the angelic wars that it is the impaling. The book, if you want to find it in there, and I did a whole video on it, is that if you actually read what was supposedly happened at this crucifixion, there never was a cross. It was a tree. And the Romans were said to use this technique as well. But yeah, and so it's about this. Isn't it odd that there is people, certain humans, that they have very larger and more defined incisors than the rest of us? Not that there is anything to it. And finally, you can't get into the subject and not go, well, but there is yet another type of vampirism that almost every person I know of has all experienced. And we call them psychic vampires. And give me 1 second as I get out of here. That is the weird one because we've all experienced it. Boy, I can look back in my career and go, yep, yep. I've dated a few women that I had no doubt as I look back. And yeah, there was more than one occupying the penthouse. Yeah. And it's interesting when you look at this topic, vampirism, psychic vampirism. What is the strongest species of psychic vampires? What is it that they use the most? I bet you're going to get this in the chat room. Sex. Yeah. The whole story of Lilith is that she consumes the souls of men and women through sex. I think I've met a couple of her daughters in my past. I'm just saying. Um, yeah. And is that not a certain type of vampirism, right? And we've all known this. We've been in, listen, I've been here long enough that, um, as I look back in my past, that there were those individuals that, no doubt about it, they fed off of the energy of others big time. I ran a bar with a person back in the day, uh, back when I lived in Houston, and I've always have had this third person perspective, kind of. But anyway, I saw more psychic vampires in bars. I mean, yeah, and you can see it. You can see how they operate, and you can tell when they cast their spell. Oh my, you know. And so, what's going on here? I mean, they feed off of that energy, which is tangible. Uh, I'm just reading some of the things in the chat room. Very interesting. I'll have to go back and look at that. It's true off the hook. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure none of you ever went to clubs or anything. I'm the only one. So, but somehow, Gilbert, I'm thinking of you, brother. I mean, I bet you met a few in your day, and I probably know some of the other ladies out there. Um, Rick says the same. Very true. Yeah, yeah. They're drawn to that. They really are. Well, I was. I mean, I got to live through the disco era, and that was just far fucking out. That's all I got to say. And I have no doubt that I met not just some psychic vampires. I think I may have actually met some real ones. I mean, yeah. I, there were certain people who I knew that were truly people of the dark. They would sleep during the day, heavy curtains, because down in Texas particularly, um, and they didn't come alive really until a couple hours after the sun went down. Yeah, it's true, Deborah. Uh, I'm reading some of these comments in here. I love y'all, man. I mean, it's no doubt. You see, it's just reality. And look what we took away with that. I mean, we took away a knowledge that, if you're here participating today, thank you. This is something that you've experienced as well. And somehow or another, favor was upon us, or we were, I don't know. Um, Here we are. and we can look back and go, holy crap. So what the fuck was you thinking? And I have met a few. But getting back to this, so this is more real than we can imagine. Um, I came up on this and I found this and I thought this was interesting because this phenomenon of psychic vampires is more than just conspiracy. I mean, it has hard. I've got white papers on the subject that you know, and in psychiatry, they look at this as a recognized, I don't know, something, you know. Um, this article here is from the Learning Mind, and it says most of us have a psychic vampire in our lives. They moan and complain, and yet nothing we say or do seems to shift them out of their negative mindset. These kinds of people always have a problem they need help with, and they always blame everyone else for their situation. They can be self pitying, negative, and sometimes nasty. And I immediately thought, that described a lot of politicians right there. I went, holy crap. I've told you that the folks, something goes on in DC. I don't know what. But yeah. Anyway, this article goes to point out that psychic vampires will do pretty much anything to get attention because this attention and energy is what feeds them. Unfortunately, psychic vampires have not learned to take care of themselves, be responsible for their own actions, and meet their own needs. This means they are constantly looking to others to make them feel better and fix their problems. Hmm. Yeah. Odd, isn't it, that you think that we've all experienced. We talked about this last week that there have been times and where you can have a certain individual who either has developed that monde modus operandi of their actions and have gotten so good at knowingly just sucking it in, you know, when they walk in and change the dynamics of the energy of the room. That's powerful. And then I'm thinking, so is this an individual or is this a move in? I mean, if a human can be possessed, why would a vampire need physicality when it could be potentially just move in psychically? I don't know. I found another thing about 10 fascinating facts about vampires. The word vampire is derived from the Turkish word of upri, upper or upor, which means witch, as per the belief of someone or some people. Hmm, there they go, blaming the witches again. And in Turkish, you know, that's I've seen independent filmmakers that have done what I thought were some really good films, and particularly that region. Wow. Uh, it's more than just folklore, let me just say that. Some believe that it is the Hungarian word of vampire, and some believe it is a Greek word. Well, if it's a Greek word, then that goes way back. Again, validating maybe our ancestors knew something that they only hoped that we would get. Let's see. Fact number two. The Oxford English Dictionary, the word vampire makes its first appearance in the English word in 1734. Well, that goes back a little ways. Um, United States wasn't even formed, right? Then, in a travelogue called Travels of the Three English Gentlemen, published in the Herlian Miscellanea in 1745, much before that, France and Germany also discussed the same. Again, showing the cross-cultural aspect of these vampires. It's only myth, only myth. Let's see. Fact three, a group of vampires is called in various places, known as including a clan, a brood, a coven, a clutch, or a pact. Well, hmm. Fact number four, sometimes vampire is known as Count Dracula, and the name is that well known in all cultures. The word vampire has been represented as the word Count Dracula in many books, as well as the Gothic novels, apart from the scary books and movies. Both words, whether it is the Count Dracula or vampire, both represent the bloodsucker creature as per mythology. Nature's got him. I mean, why wouldn't humans, right? Let's see. As per some beliefs, it is to be believed it is that vampires suck human blood in order to grab a stone table. Different people have having different beliefs about vampires' blood sucking theory, and some believe it that the people use Celtic or a stone table. It will be put on the graves with the dolmens. Hmm. Well, so another aspect of this, and as I get over here, is police reports. Now, we all have heard the stories of secret societies, and their rituals of which blood is used if you have a victim, human sacrifice. The thing about it is, our species, whether it's modern day or whether it's way back there in the rear view mirror, um, we're good at that stuff. I mean, we're really good as a species to literally sacrifice a human body, a human someone, and consider it okay because it's within the parameters of a belief, a religion. And you just alter their perception and say, well, the sacrifice is needed. And then you got to ask yourself, well, then what type of God would require human blood to be spilled? The God of the Old Testament, a bloodthirsty thing. We first get introduced to him, by blood, an animal. And boy, did they really take that to the extreme back in the day. But then again, it's about this blood. And it seems to permeate today. Any person who studies occultism, studied any of the grimoires, in which there are numerous, even within angels and demons. And the thing about it is, this blood thing is not regulated to one side. And you got the angels that are knee deep in blood, human blood. They got no problem draining a human body. You can read that in the Old Testament. And then you've got the post Old Testament which is, New Testament theology, in which the demons, well, they're all about the blood. But that's because it's the antithesis of the communion thing, which then gets back to the original point. What's with the blood? What's with the blood sacrament, the blood atonement, the propitiation of the blood sacrifice? Do you know what that means? Um, and it's all about the blood. It's deep into the blood. Now, stepping back, having said all that, here I look today and I'm going, well, if it quacks like a duck, walks like a duck, I bet you the odds are it's a duck. I mean, this is all about blood and the consumption of human blood, which then again gets back to this whole subject about vampirism. Well, is it real or is it not? It seems to be more real, and particularly coming out of Christianity, as I look back. And so when I read a lot of the grimoires that I have in my library, I've been fortunate to collect over the years, and you get into the whole thing. Lilith, the Liber Lilith, we're going to be visiting her again. It's all about the blood. And I look at this and I go, okay, so what do we have today to measure this today by the stories, the legends, the myths of yesteryear? So I just went in and did a very, when you go to the great oracle, give thanks. She's alive. She is in the form of your search engine. It's a god. It really is. In fact, most search engines are better than any god that's out there because they'll give you exactly what you want. Not only do they not only give you what you ask for, they're going to give you a whole list of things that are similar accordingly, or maybe, close to. But anyway, so I went in and began to do some searches and police reports of murder victims drained of blood. That's exactly how I put it in to the search parameters. Holy crap. Uh, wow. This is when you get into this, I said, you got to be kidding me. Hey, not only is it at local level, I mean this shit goes all the way up to the FBI, Department of Justice. I mean, and there has been some sensational cases. One little bit, the Black Dahlia. I mean, this was serial killer. And every one of the mutilations, when the police found the bodies, there was no blood in the scene. So the police said, well, then something had to happen. I mean, you've got this body, and in some cases it was in pieces, but there's no blood. Well, then somewhere they had to drain the blood. It go and read this case. Um, But it's not just there. Cop in Idaho, murders case details bloody scene in the courts and said that when they had found the body, it had been drained of blood. Um, USA Today, uh, this was in September 2017. A model found dead suffered head trauma and had her body drained of its blood. And so as I'm going through here, I'm going, holy crap. Now, we're just doing this because it's got implications because within everything we're talking about here, there's a spiritual side to this. There is something else, no doubt about it, driving it. I mean, what causes humans to drain the blood of other humans? And what are you going to do with this blood? I mean, the human body's what, got 5 pints of blood in it? Maybe a little bit more, I don't know. But nevertheless, it's a bloody mess if it gets outside its containment zone, meaning our bodies. Um, Another one, Elizabeth Short. I mean, the story is with her. Again, they found her body drained of blood. And you can go across the country. Here's another one: three unsolved murder cases where the victims were drained of their blood. Now, it is interesting. Let me get out of this. So, all these crime scenes, individuals murdered, and it's not just one area, it's not just at one particular time. And there was an individual who began to say, well, they had begun to track where bodies would be found drained of their blood. And it was their imagination, their hypothesis, their theory that really what they are seeing is these packs, these covens of vampires. And then while I was doing this, the thought came walking by, and then I remember, um, who is it? Is it the Masadi? I think it is in Africa, and they literally feed off of the cow's blood. We know as well that there are other tribes, the same thing. The mixing, the consumption of human blood goes deep in many of the rituals of many past cultures. I read one story particularly and this was in the Washington, D.C. area. Um, and I believe it was a 12-year-old boy that they found, and he had, the body had been drained of blood. And so when we start looking at some of this, you're going, so what the hell's going on? I mean, I read this thing that right now, the United States government, there are 500,000 children who have gone missing. Our government has no idea where they are, what happened to them. And I'm going, now, wait a minute. Then you take the homeless. And the fact is, local law enforcement, they usually just don't really do the body count in homeless encampments, etc. They're John Doe's and Janes. You know, no one knows them. They got no history, you know. And because no one is keeping the proper records, it's hard to determine, well, are some of these stories in some of these encampments true that they have had bodies that were drained of blood? Then you've got the phenomenon in the national parks. where each year tens of thousands of people go missing. Now, one can attribute that, well, if you get lost, you may be eaten. Yeah, that's probably a good, and that's maybe what happened to uh, a good portion of those, but not all of them are, how shall we say, victims of domestic wildlife. And no one seems to track this. And again, all of these things, if you look at this vampirism becomes more, hmm, substantiated than not. It's uncanny. Now, I'll finish this show and, we'll all go about our business for the rest of the day and not really give it too much more thought. And that's just the way it has always been and probably always will be. No one's going to make a national campaign and said, well, what we really need to discover are there truly things like vampires? Well, everyone, you'd be laughed out of the room. No one's going to take you serious. Except when those individuals go home at night and their rational minds begin to calm down and then they're going, hmm, what if there's some, what was he going to say? Maybe there's something, yeah. But on the surface, no one is going to do it. And if you again, you look at this, and whether you want to go from an organized religion to, you know, the offshoots of independent religion, different beliefs, much of it has to do with blood. And all I'm saying is just a layman, I'm going, certainly seems to be a lot of blood for it not to have any foundation. And let's just say, okay, it's complete nonsense to believe that there are vampires. Then explain to me why all this blood? Why? Why is it that, everywhere you look at a number of the Abrahamic religions are deep into the blood shit, man. I mean, I know that for a fact. And you can go through this whole Old Testament. You got the blood thing with David, you got the blood thing with Solomon, you got the whole blood thing with the Jesus dude, you got the Muhammad dude, you got I mean, it just goes on. Even in the Hindu, it's the blood. Now, the interesting thing about the Hindu is that they knew the blue race people who said that their blood was blue. Hmm. Well, isn't that what human blood is until oxygen oxygenates it? That our blood is blue? Hmm. So it's blood transference? Blood infusion? And this starts getting so weird that you look at this and you're going, okay, so what are we saying? Is there like this consortium of these vampires? They're immortal. They can change their substance. They've got intelligence that is so far beyond us that we're just the ants crawling around, um, because everything is in the blood. There is power, power, wonderful working power in the blood. Right? I mean, the whole white throne thing is the blood is spilt on the throne, right? Blood. Everywhere is freaking blood. And I'll say this, if you study it simply from the canonical scripture, the only thing about Satan and Lucifer, they never had anything to do with the blood. So, so what if? What if the ones that we think is the holy one and what have you, and the one that's always cursed is the really bad that's taken humanity down, the road to destruction. What if it was the opposite? Wait a minute. Just saying. Um, I don't know. Danny says it's a bloody mess. Isn't it the truth? It's a fact. Uh, it is a bloody mess. I mean, everything. When we're born into this realm, we go through the birth canal. It is a blood ritual. It's the blood. Everywhere's the blood. And so you're telling me that to have a species, let's say an unseen species that actually would feed off of that, that doesn't surprise me. I don't know. I think I read, in fact, man, I'm almost out of time. I'm sorry. But I read this one thing that it's like the in thing now, um, in the, jet setting, the Hollywood thing is to drink your blood, to drink the blood of others. Sure, there's nothing to this at all. Nothing to it at all. Nothing to see here. Just continue to keep on going by. And of course, there's no such thing as vampires. Vampirism is just merely just one of those things of superstition, myth, and legend that has no real foundation. Doesn't that make you feel much safer now? Hey, skies above. Uh, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's being a world of hurt. Copper-based blood vibrates at a higher frequency. There, you see, it's about the blood, but don't. So what? There's not a possibility that there is actually a thing, a species that are in fact actual vampires. I don't know. Chris, right back at you. Uh, remember as kids, we sucked our own scratches. Think about that. You know, blood brothers. I mean, this goes deep, 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 deep. Ay, ay, ay. Well, hey, Gaia. Good to see you. So, all right, everybody. Let me know your thoughts. I think I'd like to really know, do you really think that there could be a species seen unseen, obviously non-human? Well, I don't know, maybe they are. And let's say of a extraterrestrial or non-terrestrial foundation. Could there be a species that would be so long-lived that they have found that they don't, that time, gravity, the whole thing, radiation, that they found a way to beat that? And maybe they found the ability to transcend both the material and the so-called immaterial in such a manner that they produced a new form. Because to believe that new forms are not being formed is really very boxed in thinking. If evolution is what evolution is, and that it is in the spiritual as well as into the physical dimensions, then why wouldn't there be new species born in the higher realms? All right, class. I hope you've enjoyed the day. All right. Dragon says, trying to break through the roof of my house in the late 80s. That would have been, yeah, yeah, that is, that'd make you jump up and go, okay. All right, folks. Much love to you. I hope you've had fun as I do. Let me know your comments. This is one that we're going to revisit it again. I mean, you just can't. It's so titillating that there's more to this. It deserves that deep look. Um, so anyway, see y'all tomorrow with Miss Trina and Miss Jenny, and I hope you've had fun. I have. All right. I'm not going to cut myself off. I'm going to say, I'll see you tomorrow. Peace, everyone.